Welcome back to the Unstuck movement. These are true testimonies of breakthrough. I am your host, Rob Z, and this platform was created for you to find the breakthroughs in your life that you need, and to have examples of people, real people who have had incredible breakthroughs in their lives, so you know that it is possible for you. Today we have Julia Jet Livingston, one of the coolest names I've ever had on the podcast. And Julia, I love to dive in with a question right off the bat. For you, the question is, what are the mental shifts that were essential for you to break out of the survival mode that you were stuck in to thriving in your life and your business?
Thank you so much for having me here, Rob. And I love this question because mindset is so incredibly important when we're in business. And it's not like I just walked off the street and into a six-figure business. I totally had to have mindset shifts around everything that I did. And the first thing that I had to notice was what I was thinking. I spent a really long time in a very victim mindset. I didn't see myself at cause for what was happening around me and for the way my life was. So I really needed to start noticing what my thinking was and deciding if, without judgment, because it's so easy for us to waste time in judgment and be like, oh, that's such a bad thought, when we can really instead just decide, you know what, that thought's not serving me, and what would serve me is. So when we really start focusing on what we need, what is going to feed us in our businesses, what's really going to feed our soul, then that's going to help us step up into that next level of life and business and happiness. So once I started noticing what was serving me in my mindscape and what wasn't, and working on transforming that, I really see the mind like it's like a trail in the woods where there's like these big blown out trails, right? There's these big ones, and those are the ones that we're going to take all the time. You know, in a time of stress, we're going to take that big trail and we're going to run with it. So when we want to encourage new growth, when we want to encourage a new trail, it's not going to be easy at first. We're going to have to choose this new thought. We know that. So first we notice, and then second, we decide if it's working for us or not. And then we start having to choose that thought over and over again. I mean, mindset is ongoing. So we start building that new trail by using it every day. We choose that trail and we take care of it. You know, when we have a trail that we like, you know, I even bring clippers out there sometimes, and I'll clip back the bushes so I can make this trail wider, make it easier for me to walk through. And I was thinking today, it's so funny because I was just thinking of this today, about how one of my favorite survivalists is named Tom Brown Jr. He recently passed away and the world misses him dearly. And he would talk about how in a survival, you know, if you're in a survival situation, you're going to want to use separate trails, and you're going to want to use them frequently, and you don't want to really dig down into one trail. And I was just thinking, but that's just for survival. That's just for survival. And when we want to thrive, we want to create trails that are going to serve us continually for the rest of our lives.
Oh yeah, that is so good. I mean, that is how we've gotten to where we are today in society, by paving down those trails that work so well and using them over and over and over again. And, you know, really interesting you say that. A couple of different things for me pop up. Number one, I use the analogy of sled riding, because sled riding, the same thing. First, those sled paths are really hard to go down, and you got to like push your butt down them when you're on the sled. But once you get that trail, that sled riding path packed down deep enough, you will fly down that thing so easily. And that analogy is so good. And I do the same thing, actually. So I do a lot of like bike riding, and I'll do like road bike riding on the street and in the woods. And when I'm in the woods, I take like this little machete with me. So if there's like a trail that like used to be good and now is kind of overgrown, I'll chop down the branches that need to be chopped down. And I think that's a great metaphor for life, is sometimes we have to forge that path, especially when we have the wrong path formed. We've got to forge a new path, and you better be intentional
Yeah.
about chopping down the things that you're chopping down. So before we go any further, because I'm already loving this conversation and where it's going, I have to just welcome everybody here. The Unstuck movement is sponsored by the Connected Leaders Academy. Check out connectedleadersacademy.com. Over 400 incredible entrepreneurs, heart-centered entrepreneurs from all over the world. Amazing platform for you to check out. And a quick reminder also for anybody checking out the podcast right now, if you're ready to become the authority in your field, make a lasting impression on people's lives, and get paid what you're truly worth, do not wait. Check out my website, robzwentz.com. Join the wait list for the exclusive Pro Podcaster Academy platform. Your breakthrough will start at robzwentz.com. Today, we have the amazing Julia Jet Livingston with us. She rose above life on the streets, create a six-figure massage practice, and now she helps healers align their businesses with their values and their spirituality. So let's go back in time to the previous version of Julia. Who were you before you became the person you are now?
Oh my goodness, I was so scared. I give that girl a hug every day. Every now and then I think of her and I'm just like, oh, honey, you need a hug. Goodness. There was so much pain in my life and in my mind that I just started running, you know. I started running from everyone I knew and everything I knew. And I felt really safe on the street. And when I look back at that, it doesn't make much sense because I grew up with a pretty healthy family, a loving, large family. And I went to a nice school, but the thing is I didn't feel like I fit in there. I didn't feel like I fit in. And so I started looking for places where I did think that I fit in and started shifting who I was. Or maybe I didn't shift who I was. When you're 13 years old, you're just kind of becoming whatever you're surrounding yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
So I started surrounding myself with hanging out in Golden Gate Park. And after a while, like that, things became normalized, like being drunk at 10 a.m., panhandling, waking up in the park. All these things became normalized. And I mean, after a while, I don't want to go deep into my story, but when I was 17, that's when I moved into Golden Gate Park and I started living there full time and living that lifestyle full time. When I was 18, I started hopping trains and living in abandoned houses. And I mean, I just went from there and mistakes were made, and there was a time when I knew that I no longer, not that I didn't want to do it any longer, but I didn't want to do it when I was 50. But the thing is that since I'd surrounded myself with that mindset and accepted that as the truth, as the only thing that I was capable of, I didn't know any better and I couldn't do any better because as far as I was concerned, that's the best that I could do. And I was doing rather well. I remember like 10 years ago, I was proud of myself for living in a car, and then I learned how to surf, and like a boyfriend took me in, taught me how to surf. And then I realized that I didn't want to work in a warehouse. What can I do so I can surf all day and then only work nights and weekends? I would become a massage therapist, and then there's this whole time I'm still really struggling with alcoholism and just a painful mindset. And I just say just straight up depression. And so what I ended up doing was, of course, I had to quit drinking. And in the end, I quit smoking weed too. I got 5 years clean off everything. Just really recently. And I'm so proud of that because my life has shifted and finding recovery and a community in that. And it's what I was actually looking for the whole time, was a community where I fit in and felt what I needed to find. Starting to notice like the shadow side of what I was doing and how I am actually responsible for everything happening in my life, and taking that responsibility. It was really beautiful because as I was growing in my spiritual journey, I was also growing my business. And when I talk about spirituality, I love it to be very welcoming of everyone, because when we talk about spiritual principles, these encompass all religions and all spiritualities. These are just like the honesty and the open-mindedness and the willingness, and really that faith that everything's going to come out all right, even if it's not what we want. There's always this path that's bringing us along, and especially when we stay focused. When I was staying focused on what I wanted, like when I first started my first business, that was an accident. That was a total accident. I didn't mean to start a business. I thought I was going into a chiropractor's office for a job interview, and then I'm shaking his hand and he's congratulating me on my new business because I'm going to rent an office from him. And I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. But I said I wanted to do it anyway because I had manifested that moment. That office was everything that I dreamed of. And I even had it written down on paper. It was exactly what I wanted. So I had to say yes. And then I had to figure out how to get clients. I had to figure out I had to figure out that I didn't have the right mindset to have a business. And everything around me needed to transform. Everything inside of me transformed, and then everything around me needed to transform. Um, the just the transformation of having a business is what has given me all of the freedom that I get to experience now. And that's why I'm so passionate about sharing how business and spirituality don't have to be an either or. They don't have to be exclusive. It's very much a both and. When we have that freedom and that success in business, we're really able to show up for our clients at a higher level. We're able to show up in generosity. We're able to show up for our relationships, and really create that freedom in our lives so that we can next level a second business, or we can go out and do things that we love, or go travel, and really find that financial relaxation that I think that we all crave.
Oh, you said so many good things in there, and I agree with you so much in the aspect of business, personal, spiritual, the integrated life. And something that I've struggled with myself is, and I work on this all the time, is not being different people when I'm doing different things. Like sometimes when I'm in business, I feel like I have to be different than I am in my personal life. And that's not true. And everything that is professional blends into your personal, whether you know it or not. And a lot of people want to talk about business stuff, professional stuff, like it's not connected to personal stuff. But if your personal life is not in order, your professional life will not also be in order. Even if you appear to be very successful in your professional life, but your personal life's a mess, there are cracks in that lining that are going to be humongous craters if you do not address them. So I love the fact that you touched on that. And much like you just said, I never anticipated 7.5 years ago when I left my career in radio broadcasting to start a business, I never anticipated the personal development journey that was about to happen. And we can only grow in our business as much as we grow personally. So you're forced when you have your own business. This is why I believe, God made us entrepreneurs, made us creators, right? So we're creators, so we create things. So being an entrepreneur is really you're creating the world in the way that you see it, in the way that you want it to be. And that requires you to personally develop, because you can only grow as far as you've grown on the inside. And so I really love that. Those are amazing points. One of the things I did want to ask, going backwards, what led you? You said about Golden Gate Park and you ended up there and ended up living there. What first led you? I'm interested about this because I was led down I don't know if I was led down. I went down the wrong path in my life also, and years of addiction and things of that nature. What led you to Golden Gate Park initially when you were 13 or however old you were?
You want the story?
I'm just curious what first got you there, because it sounds like you knew you shouldn't have been there, but you also felt welcome there and accepted. So there must have been like a push and pull that got you there.
I'll tell you that story. How I first ended up there. It was the year 2000, and I grew up in San Francisco. So Golden Gate Park was right there, and I was on my way to buy the first System of a Down CD from Amoeba Records. Dates me. And so I parked my bike in the Panhandle, which is part of Golden Gate Park, because I didn't realize that there was bike parking at Amoeba. And so I was walking through the Panhandle, and I came across a big group of like gutter punks, and they were all drinking 40s, and they were having a great time, and they're listening to Slayer. And I thought, oh my God, these are my people. And they were really welcoming to me. They're like, hey, come hang out with us. They thought I was a runaway. Really, I'm just on my bike on my way to pick up the System of a Down CD. And they're like, come hang out with us. I'm like, well, I have to go pick up the CD, but I'll come back. And so I came back, and then they were just, see, I didn't have friends at school. I had a few friends, but I got bullied a lot and all that stuff. I was having a hard time. Middle school is between 7th and 8th grade. It's an awkward time for anyone. And I found this group, and they invited me in, and I loved them. I loved them from day one. And you know what? Not very many of them are left. Not very many of them still walk this planet, but I still love them. I feel like they saved me from a real darkness that I was experiencing inside. And I needed a new saving after that. But I feel like when they showed up in my life, I needed them. And I'm so glad they were there for me when they were. Yeah. So that's how I started hanging out. They invited me to a birthday party. It was in Golden Gate Park, and then I'd hang out with them if any chance I got.
It's a really interesting way of looking at that, right? Because it's very true. You needed them at that time because of the place that you were in. But then you grew through that time to where it was now the thing that had helped you out of a certain place. You've grown past it. So now it was time to leave it behind and go to a new thing. And so many times in life, and this is where, the title of this podcast, Unstuck, right? This is where people get stuck, is they end up somewhere and they don't feel like they're able or deserving or allowed to change.
Yeah.
And I've heard this from people in my life that, like, why would you change? They don't want anything to change. They don't want people to change. They don't want it. It's the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset in a simple form. But some of us get fixed and some of us decide to grow. Why do you think you kept growing and other people didn't? What was it about you?
As far as that's concerned, I feel like I didn't have a choice. Like, change is going to happen. Change is going to happen. If I wanted to step into, if I wanted to step into the next level, if I wanted to quit drinking, like, I pretty much noticed that once I stopped drinking, it wasn't very fun to hang out with my friends anymore. They were always drunk. And it was
Right.
it was it was hard to hang out with them. And as much as I love them, I couldn't spend all my time with them the way I used to. And even if I tried to, I wouldn't be contributing in the same way I used to either, because I wouldn't be buying booze. I was just kind of there, and I wasn't having a lot of fun.
It's a very simple way of putting it. Yes, because those scenarios usually come with some sort of baggage, and that baggage, because you have to shed it. And once you shed it and your eyes are open to, like, oh, holy smokes, I don't fit in the way that I used to. This isn't working out the way that it used to. So really good. That's actually really good, because we'll associate ourselves with the thing that actually has been holding us back for so long as such a part of us. And we think we can't be without that thing and be the same person. Just, you were talking about stopping smoking weed. I used to think smoking weed, I was only funny whenever I got high, or I was only funny because I got high. It turns out that I'm funny because I'm funny, and I actually find myself to be more funny. And this isn't like me bragging or anything. I'm just like, I noticed that I'm actually more entertained by me when I'm not high than when I am high.
Yeah.
But it was a lie that I had created because of the substance.
We cling to that identity. And that we have this identity, and it feels so safe. I know that I felt really safe in my identity and with the people I hung out with, and this life that I'd created, and like I already said, the identity I'd created for myself. What would happen if I was to step out of that? Would I be unlovable? Would people not want to talk to me anymore? Would I be different? Would I not like myself anymore? But the thing is I just didn't want. It didn't matter. It didn't matter if I was going to be different. I had to be different. It was clear that I had to be different. I think that's one of the most courageous things people do, is when we decide that we're going to leave an old identity behind and start creating a new one. I mean, that's when we start getting curious about who we need to be to step into that next level. Like, say, if we have like a new money goal, like we have to start figuring out, well, then who is this person who's getting this goal? What are they
Right.
like? What are all the things that they're doing and all the things that they're not going to do anymore? And we
Mm,
start creating this new identity. But there's usually a little bit of fear that goes along with that. I was hosting a workshop recently, and I brought up money goals, and boy, there was a lot of pushback. People were not buying it. I was just like, this is about identity, guys. Like, let's start focusing on who we need to be. We can push past the fear of setting a big goal and instead focus on who we need to be to get that goal, instead of all of the fear of what if it doesn't happen? Well, what if it does? What if it does happen? You know?
that's so good. Okay, so 60 seconds. We got to pause, shout out the sponsor of the podcast. When we come back, though, I want to touch on this new identity. So, what is this new identity like for you? Who is the new you? What were the things that you left behind, that you had to leave behind in order to grow and change? Because everybody can apply this to their life. We'll talk about that in 60 seconds.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world, globally, all across the country, high performers, titans of industry. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, this is where you want to be. Join the Connected Leaders Academy today. We are scaling massively. We want to welcome you in. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JAESCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
So, Julia, we're talking about this new identity, the new you. What were the things you had to leave behind and the things you had to embrace to step into this new identity?
Oh, goodness. The things I had to leave behind. Oh, how long do I want to be scared of something? How long, like, how
Oh,
much
yeah.
time do I want to waste thinking about what if it doesn't happen? I think there was a time when I would be so stuck in indecisive fear that it would really hold up this like decision making. Like, what if it doesn't work out? What if that? And really shifting that into something more positive of, I mean, what if it does happen? So much of the reality that we create is created in our minds. And when I started letting go of anxiety, one of my favorite things I've ever learned about anxiety is that it's a fear of the future.
Hmm.
The future is just things that haven't happened yet. And we can't tell what's going to happen in the future. So why paint a future that's going to cause us stress or bring us down when we could instead start imagining a future that's going to be incredible and exciting and is going to pull us into maybe somewhat scary action, but we're going to take that action anyway because we see this future ahead of us. Whereas if we are imagining some kind of negative future, then oh goodness, it's going to be so much easier to curl up in a ball and eat ice cream on the couch because oh my goodness, I just want to stay safe. Like, where our minds are built to stay safe.
Hmm.
That's what our brain is made for. But if we really want to thrive, we have to step outside of that safe zone. Our brain just wants to keep us alive. It's all about survival. It's all about survival. And we've come so far since our happy little brains who take care of us have had to keep us from getting eaten by bears and lions. And I mean, occasionally I still worry about bears and lions, but I mean, I live in the woods, but that's not something I worry about in my business. I know that in my business, I'm going to need to imagine this future that I want and then let myself see what action I'm going to have to take to get there. And
Yeah.
those actions are going to create results. And it's so important that I also decide what internal state I'm going to choose. What's the emotional state that I'm taking action from? Because that's something that I get to control as well. I mean, even the realization that I get to choose my thoughts. I might not get to choose the first thought, but I can choose the second. So I want it to empower me. I want my thoughts to be what gets me to the next level. I want my thoughts to live in a place that brings me joy. And if I get to choose, at the beginning of the week, if I'm like, I'm going to see this week and it is going to bring me so much excitement. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to change people's lives. It's so much more empowering than the person that the last person that I was, the girl who needs a hug.
Mm-hmm.
I think about her sometimes. I think about her a lot, and I give her a lot of hugs, and I'm so happy to. She needed one, and I get to be that person who can show up for an old self like that. Yeah.
Because it's, I don't know, the old me's still there. He comes up all the time. Yeah, you can be really compassionate for him, and but also be like, listen, buddy, let's get it together. That's how I kind of look at it. It's half and half. Like, it's all right, man. Like, kind of give myself a break and like give ourselves grace. Grace is the best thing we can give ourselves. I think that, and the best thing we can give other people, give them grace. But at the same time, if you love somebody, like, show people love, but love does not mean allowing things to happen that don't need to happen. So love is like really pushing people too. And so if you really love yourself, you're going to push yourself. Love is not allowing people to stay where they are. Love is not allowing people to be destructive their whole entire life. Love is like, hey, I know you're meant for more than this. So do something about it. And it's easy. It's so easy, especially in the coaching world, I can tell people that, or I can lead people to that all day long. I don't tell them, but I lead them to it. But then for me, I have to do the same thing to me, because I can let me just stay where I am. And that's not where I'm supposed to be. You can't stand still. You're either growing or you're dying. You're either moving forward or falling backward. Mm-hmm. You said something a few minutes ago that is so good. And a question I want to ask the audience: how long do you want to be scared of something? That is such a good question, because I know, at least for me, and I'm sure this was your situation, you get so freaking sick of being scared of something. You're like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm so sick of this fear. It's not who I am. I don't accept it. I'm not going to receive it. I rebuke this fear. I don't want it. And so that impetus leads to action. We need to have the action. Of course, you're so sick of the thing, but there's got to be action in place. It sounds like to me, going back to you hopping trains, living on the streets, to where you are now, I see you now. You don't resemble that person in my mind, or what that person would look like at all. So there had to have been a major shift that occurred. Can you point to a couple of things that happened during that period that you were like noticing, okay, this is, maybe you didn't notice it at the time, but in retrospect, hindsight's 2020, you see like, oh, these were the things that kicked me out of the place that I was at?
I mean, I simply, I couldn't do what I was doing anymore. Like, I couldn't be an alcoholic anymore. And outside of that, I wanted to have a successful business. And like I said, I didn't walk off this, I didn't walk off the street and then create a business. There was time in between where I went to school and I got certifications. And then, I think it was probably like 4 years or something. It was like enough time to go to college or something. But
was it somebody in your life that believed in you that pushed you there?
The chiropractor I worked with, he was really helpful. He was, it's like, I felt like he was taking a chance on an unknown kid, Mm-hmm. And
how did you get off the street? So there's got to be so even getting off the street and getting into school, how did that happen?
Oh, my boyfriend.
And how did you meet him?
I had known him for years. Okay. We're not together anymore, but he's amazing. And he's a surfer, but he used to squat houses and stuff like that. And so that's how I met him. He was living in an abandoned house in San Francisco, and that's where we met. And we always stayed in touch as good friends. And he started surfing, and so I was kind of just like, I want to learn to surf. And so he started teaching me, and then we started hanging out a lot, and then I started living at his house. Yeah, and then after all that time surfing, I started realizing that, I didn't want to just work this 9 to 5 job anymore. So I started looking at opportunities where I could have my own schedule. And one of the fastest, easiest ways I could find was, well, massage. I was really drawn to be a healer. Um, and so I was looking at a few different options in the health industry, and I settled on massage because it seemed like a simple prospect.
So the surfing, I think this is also a key point, because there's always something like that for me. Jiu-jitsu, for me, bike riding, like bicycle riding, those things would bring me a sense of peace and connection, and that I guess flow state is the easiest way to go with that inspire you and give you new ideas and give you a new identity, plus the exercise, the movement that comes along with that. What was it about the surfing that gave you new life? Was there something about that started to change you?
I think it was really helpful for me to have a place to channel my feelings. I had a lot of feelings and I didn't really know how to use them yet or how to feel them. And so in that part of my life, it was so helpful to have healthy exercise and a place to put anger, all the anger and all the sadness that I had endured from putting myself through all that trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was an incredibly healing place for me to be, and it started feeling like a really safe place for me to be, because I could just channel that stuff into the ocean, and the ocean's really big. It can take it.
Yeah. Kind of, I mean, just the visual of the ocean water washing things away from you, right? Kind of like cleansing you is very real. Just like sweating a lot. I feel like sweating a lot is kind of the same thing. You're shedding a lot of yourself out through that you need to shed. And so, okay, let's fast forward. You come out off the streets, you get into meet the chiropractor, you start a massage clinic. What's the span of time from you being off the streets until now? What's that span of time been?
2017 to 2024.
Okay.
It's been 7 years.
Amazing.
Yeah. Wait, no, 2016. So it's been 8 years.
Amazing. So how have you, because we all take our mess and make it a message, right? If we make it through the mess, it becomes a message, and we serve people with it. So how have you taken that mess and turned it into a message? What does that look like now?
Oh goodness, no matter how dark your bottom is, you can come back, you can have success. You're worthy of your biggest dreams. And I know this because I've lived it, and that's my message now. And I love that you say that about taking the mess out of the message, because I think sometimes, especially early in a journey of self-discovery, there's so much mess, and after a while we start filtering out where that message is, so that we can help others. And that's such an important part of a spiritual journey, is service.
How have you turned it into service? So tell me about that. What does that look like to be of service now?
Oh my goodness. These days I show up so much. I have free networking groups locally. I show up in my Facebook group once a week and give free coaching. I'm a big part of recovery locally as well. I love showing up for my people in recovery, and showing up in service that way, because I mean, as part of my message is, like, no matter how dark your bottom is, like, you're worthy of your biggest dreams. You're worthy of that. And so I love showing up in my community in that way. I'd say those are my main ways of being of service now.
I love that. So in your Facebook group, you go live once a week, and people can connect with you. So if you are watching this, you can see it on the screen, but if you're listening, you can go to facebook.com/groups/Holistic Healer Pros, PROS. That's Holistic Healer Pros on Facebook. Connect with Julia and be a part of one of those live discussions inside of her group. I absolutely love that, because we need to change our circles in order for us to change, right? You changed your circle back in the day, and it's interesting. So I think we have some parallels in the fact that, like, when I was like 18, I had a couple of friends in high school, but not many. I didn't have many friends. I was kind of a loner, I guess you could say. And I remember one day saying to myself, Rob, you need more friends. And so what that did was led me to get friends, but they weren't intentional friends. They weren't the right friends. It was anybody who would be friends with me, I became friends with. And those friends, none of us were bad. We weren't bad people. We were just lost. We were all really, really lost. And so that led me down a path of addiction, of just, a lot of those guys, and they weren't bad people, but they ended up in prison. They ended up in rehabs. Some of them are dead. And unfortunately, I don't really talk to many of them anymore. Every once in a while we'll connect, but I look back at that and I had no intention over my circle. Now I got, over the past, 7 years, I've been very intentional about my circle. What about you? What would you say about that? The people that you allow into your life, how has that changed you, and what do you encourage people to do?
Just a little bit on what do I encourage people to do?
To change their circles.
Oh yeah. Okay. I love having people in my life that they don't have to be positive all the time, because I really don't like fake positivity. But I do love people who are open to seeing their mindset and working on it. I love being around spiritual people. I love being around people who are growing, I love being around fellow entrepreneurs, especially. I love people who are growing spiritually. I guess I love being around growth. It's so much fun to be around people who are also progressing, because we can celebrate wins, and we can also bounce ideas off one another. That's part of why I started my local Humboldt Healers meetup group, because we get to talk to each other. We just have like a circle, and it's totally magical. We just have this beautiful circle of spiritual people, and we talk about how we can collaborate and how we can help one another, and what our businesses are like, and like who we can send to one another, and then we just have kind of a fun discussion about each other's businesses. And it's really, really beautiful to be in that kind of conversation, like live and in person with people.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. The company you keep will change your life for sure, and inspire you and push you in directions. I think you said towards the beginning of this thing, you can never really imagine where you're going to go, right? You can imagine it, you can kind of map it out, but the best laid plans. This is just a biblical thing. You're going to receive more than you could ever imagine, right? You're going to, when you align yourself correctly, you will experience and receive far beyond what you could ever imagine. You can't even really plan it. And so when it happens, it's like, oh, this is what I thought it was going to look like, but it actually looks like this. And it's actually way better than I could have even laid it out, because our minds are limited as far as what we want or what can happen. So I absolutely love this conversation, Julia. This has been amazing. If people want to find out more about you, they can go to juliajet.com. Go there, juliajet.com/empower focus. Anything you want to leave the audience with before we sign off?
I'm just so grateful to be here. And like I said earlier, you're worthy of your dreams. When you start focusing on what you want, that's when you're going to empower your next steps. To focus on what you want, not on what you don't. Yeah. Because the unconscious mind it's always working for you. And whether or not you're choosing intentionally what you want, your unconscious mind is working for you. Mm-hmm. And you can convince your unconscious mind what's possible. So if you can visualize something that you want to visualize, the next place you're going, you can see it, you can hear it, maybe you can smell it, you can hear what people are saying to you. Mm-hmm. That's really going to empower that inner space, and it's going to help you create an emotional state that'll get you there.
Yeah, we're constantly drawing ourselves towards something. You have to hold a vision. We all hold a vision, whether we realize it or not. Mm-hmm. So why not choose the vision, right? Yeah. Why not be intentional about that vision? That's really good. It's so it's like simple, but it's also difficult and complicated, because you have to hold that vision. You got to make it real, and it's got to be tangible, and you've got to be really making real steps towards it. Mm-hmm. So it becomes actualized. So that's really, really good. Amazing stuff. I love that. Once again, if you want to be the authority in your space and launch your platform, check me out at robzwentz.com. This has been the Unstuck Movement. This is another true testimony of breakthrough. We'll catch you next time. Thank you for being here.